Good evening. Hi, my name is David Gauna. I am a Youth Advisory Board member to Alma, Association of Latinos, Latinas in Motivating Action. And right beside me, I have Kenny Martin-Ocasio. Hi, Kenny.
Hi, how are you? Thank you for having me.
Pretty good. Awesome. Before we get started, let me just give you all a heads up that if any point during our program tonight that you have any questions, you'll see that there's a number at the bottom of this screen that you can call in and ask your question to us. At the same time, you are also welcome to visit Alma's webpage at almachicago.org, and we'll show you that webpage right now. Up here, you can select our contact tab, where it'll link you to our number and also an info at almachicago.org email, where you can ask questions and follow up with us. Yes, all that good stuff. But tonight we have a show where we're going to be talking with Kenny Martin-Ocasio about rare and experience that he was able to participate in representing Alma as a board member. Kenny has served Alma since 2009 as a board member and has worked in community activities and engagements for various of years. Kenny?
Well, hi, David. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for the remarkable job that you're doing here, making sure that the LGBTQ Latinx issues are brought to the forefront.
Awesome. And then I know Kenny, and I have so much respect for him, so that's why I'm really excited for this interview and this program. So to talk a little bit specifically about what we're going to be talking about is Kenny had recently, I want to say around in January, you were able to visit the Middle East, specifically
November, actually. November of 2015.
Oh, okay, my fault. November,
okay.
Thank you. Yeah, that's right. I don't know why I was connecting it to the election, and I was thinking
it was actually during the day of election.
Awesome. Kenny was invited by an organization called A Wider Bridge. Just so for our viewers know what A Wider Bridge is. A Wider Bridge is an LGBTQ Jewish organization, nonprofit organization. I believe that they're national. And just so you have an idea a little bit about them, I'm going to read their mission statement for you really quick. A Wider Bridge is the pro-Israel organization that builds bridges between Israelis and the LGBTQ North Americans and allies. And some of their value points were, believe in learning of their past, both, their straight and LGBTQ Jew community, believe in building relationships and learning through one another's work. Kenny, can you talk a little bit about just how do you know A Wider Bridge?
So one of the greater experiences that I also had was the privilege of being one of the co-chairs to the National LGBTQ Task Force Creating Change Conference when it was here in Chicago. And during the formation and during all of the preparation for the conference, I was able to meet a whole host of people, and one of them was Lori Grauer from A Wider Bridge herself. And so we formed a relationship and a friendship, and over the months, because we work on the preparation for the conference for a very long time, and it's a very intense work, we were able to develop a relationship, and after that, she saw it fit to invite me, along with 30 other leaders from the United States, 4 of which were from Chicago, to participate in last year's LGBTQ mission to Israel. So it was an honor not only to be invited, but also a great opportunity to represent Alma.
Awesome. So you talked about, the project that you're talking about, or the experience that you engaged in, was their leadership mission, correct?
It was a mission driven primarily to drive more of what their mission is about, which is bringing LGBT organizers and leaders from the U.S. into Israel and really engage in conversations about all sorts of things that were affecting us.
Okay. And if you have any questions about A Wider Bridge, you're welcome to visit their website. Their website, widerbridge.com, I believe, or .org. If we can go back to a little bit about that trip and the experience that you encountered, I think when viewers are hearing about a visit to Israel, you can't really talk about Israel without also engaging in a conversation about their relationship and the media on how their relationship with Israel and Palestine, right? Can you talk a little bit about your preparation, your mental preparation, right before you actually went to Israel and participated with a Wider Bridge in this experience?
Absolutely. Because of the remarkable work that Alma has been doing in advocating for the rights of all of the Latino immigrants that we represent, it was through that lens that I wanted to experience also what is it like to be an oppressed LGBT person in another country, and what is that experience like. And so it was a wonderful experience. Part of what we didn't necessarily plan on was the results from the election, and that sort of hit us hard because that was right 2 days after the election was when the actual mission work began, and that was 10 days of intense work.
Wow.
So that also helped color a lot of the conversations that took place during the mission. And but nonetheless, the work was significant. We were able to meet with remarkable folks from Jerusalem, which is a very conservative area of Israel, all the way to Tel Aviv, which is a much more progressive area of Israel. We were able to also cross the border into Palestine and meet with some folks there as well. And it was one of the most enriching experiences that I've had, I think, as an LGBT advocate. It strengthened me. It sort of helped me be grounded, and I'm really grateful for that.
So let's backtrack a little bit. You went to visit Israel. Israel is a Jewish-run state, right?
Correct.
But you also went to visit as a representative of Alma, which is a LGBTQ Latino-based organization,
Correct.
right? Along with other LGBTQ leaders and allies, correct?
Mm-hmm.
What was that like, knowing that you're going into a religious-based country? I mean, let's talk about what was the work that you guys are seeing that's being done for the LGBTQ community in Israel.
One of the things that I was really in awe of was how a lot of the LGBTQ folks in Israel are very much attached to their faith, and they actually have and live in our harmony between their faith and their sexual orientation, despite some of the proclivities of the Jewish faith that somehow makes them feel like they're not necessarily a part of that community. But we were able to meet with a lot of folks that were ordained rabbis that are in fact LGBTQ members as well. And they really spoke of the work and the struggle as well of bringing those two parts of themselves together, the faith and the sexual orientation. And it really gives us the opportunity to not take for granted the things that perhaps we do here, because we are a country that, for the most part, separates church and state. But nonetheless, it also gives us an opportunity to look at how folks want to bring those two very separate and very different sort of organisms together.
So, I mean, when you're talking about, how there's not much of a separation between those who identify as LGBTQ and living in Israel and are still going by their faith. Do you see any intersections with that with our communities, our Latino community, Latinx communities?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that's very significant because within the Latino community, so many of us have been brought up Catholic, and so many of us are attached to our Catholic faith and really struggle and reconcile the dogma of the Catholic faith, the exclusionary dogma around our sexual orientation and our sexual orientation as well. And it is something that then you sort of learn more of an appreciation about, because there are folks that really identify very strongly with their faith and their spirituality and find a means by which they can find peace with their sexual orientation as well.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I want to backtrack a little bit. You did say that you went to visit through Palestine as well. Did you get a chance to meet any identifying LGBTQ youth who are also Palestine? Is Israel or in the organizations who are identified as LGBTQ doing anything with Palestinian youth as well who identify?
So there were many LGBT organizations in Israel that we visited. And there, not so much in the Palestine region, but in Israel, we were able to meet a lot of different Arabs and Palestine youth and adults that identify as LGBTQ that have, in fact, left Palestine and don't re-enter the region. The intersectionality, the common ground of sexual orientation and the struggle with that is what sort of binds that community. So they're able to somehow put aside what it's a very animus type of relationship as a result of the political situation there, and bring together their experiences as members of an oppressive society as a result of their sexual orientation, and use that as a bridge.
Okay. Cool. Awesome. Cool. So, knowing Alma's follow, right? Alma has been engaging in their work since 1989, working with advocating for the Latino, Latina, Latinx, LGBTQ community, have such a wide range of followers, of organizers and activists, all sorts of people. Going through a Wider Bridge website, there was also connections of articles that kept on bringing up about pink washing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and for our viewers, I want to take a moment to explain a little bit about what that means. There was an article that I read. It was from it was by Outward, written by a man named Tyler Lopez, where it was called "Why Pink Washing Insults Gays and Hurts Palestinians." You can find this. You can find this link through Google, through your research and stuff like that. But in the context of Israel and Palestine, it described pink washing is defined as an indigenous effort by the Israel government to use the country's generally positive record of LGBTQ rights to distract attention from human right abuse on Palestine. What do you think about that?
Well, I can see how there is some evidence of that. I mean, we entered, especially when we entered Tel Aviv, it is clear that the LGBT community is very much embraced, and we felt very much very comfortable. We felt comfortable as well in Jerusalem, but there wasn't the safe and open spaces that we're used to were not as prevalent. Having said that, the organization that was bringing us there at Wider Bridge, in their work, didn't present any evidence of that type of behavior, of that type of propaganda. But in speaking with some members of Parliament, actually, and some of the other legislators, they do acknowledge that, yes, there is some of that sort of strategy that has been played by some members of the government as well. And, it is controversial because, in fact, you cannot simply separate oppression from one group by highlighting acceptance of another. And it's something that we in Alma ourselves are very cognizant of. But they don't deny the fact that it exists. They continue to struggle with figuring out a way in which they can continue to build bridges rather, and eliminate gaps. But it's part of the fabric of that political system and that society.
Got you. Thank you for sharing that. Going back, so on their Wider Bridge website, you'll see there's a video of the experience that a lot of the people who were invited to participate in this experience, different LGBTQ leaders and allies. You actually mentioned in the video, you said that I did not expect it to be as diverse. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, it was actually a very interesting experience, especially in Jerusalem. I found myself looking at a very wide spectrum of folks. There's a very strong and large Arab presence. There are Christians, there are Muslims, there are Jews. So it was a very diverse, religiously diverse, politically diverse. There were folks from many other countries as well. So it was very interesting. And it's also an increasingly young population, I think. And but it was really interesting to see not only the diversity, but especially in Jerusalem, the effort to cohabitate, coexist, and share that city, share that all of that history, which is very sacred to a lot of them, separately and for different reasons. So that was very, for me, it was very eye-opening.
Were there any specific memories that you've seen with the work that's going on out there, fighting for LGBTQ rights? Were there any specific spaces or gatherings or anything like that?
You know, every single moment, every single contact with someone we met had a specific and special meaning. And so I'll share some of those with you. One of them was with an Arab young man who had been present when this specific LGBTQ center had been attacked by a shooter. And he was spared, but he recalled the experience. And it was very interesting to hear it from the perspective of an Arab young man. We also met with a trans man, Israeli soldier. And, you know, in Israel, the military has actually been very accepting of the LGBT community for far longer than the U.S. has. So it was very interesting to see not only that acceptance being so systematic and so throughout the military system specifically, but to actually engage in a conversation with someone who's lived through actually his transition, and feels very much a part of the military community as well. You know, we had an opportunity to meet with the then ambassador to Israel from the U.S., then Shapiro. And it was a great experience because it really reminded us of the great influence that the United States has abroad, especially in that region. We also had an opportunity to meet a remarkable young rabbi lesbian who shared with us, especially in the context of what had happened here in the election, what she calls a model that she's embraced, which is that of radical empathy. And it's a model that really subscribes to the idea of looking to your strongest enemies and attempting to engage them. And the work that goes in doing that, being one that's very deliberate, very thoughtful, and very progressive and incremental. And it was very interesting to hear that because, especially in light of what was happening with the election, many of us felt so forsaken and so alone that it was difficult to then think that we were coming back to the States, inspired to engage folks that think differently from us, especially for us at Alma, in representing such a vulnerable segment of the LGBT community. When we talk about Latinos, the Latinx, and when you speak of the undocumented, that to even contemplate the idea of looking for and looking to engage those who want who want us the least, perhaps. It's sort of different. It's sort of challenging. It's sort of different. But it really provides a different framework of activism.
Wow. So you said radical empathy, right?
Radical empathy is what they call it.
I mean, what a time to be part of that conversation. Literally right when Trump was voted into office.
It is, you know, and it also,
Well,
I think.
just add. Just because just for the simple fact that I know, like, you know, even myself that I'm guilty of, as soon as I found out that somebody was a Trump supporter, right, on my Facebook page, it was like delete, block, buy, get away.
That's exactly what she
know?
was saying. She said instead of deleting folks, which is easy to do because you so want to dismiss folks, because you somehow feel that they represent the worst of the nation or the things that you fear the most, we really need to look for ways of engaging them. And those are the ones that we need to be sort of seeking out first.
Right.
Instead of our allies, because for the most part, whatever messages we have, our allies already know them. We really need to figure out ways in which we can sort of penetrate the psyche of those that don't want to ally with us. And it was a very interesting conversation that, which effect sort of lingered throughout the stay there as we were doing the work. We also went to a supportive housing facility for LGBTQ youth, where we met LGBTQ youth from Ethiopia
Oh, wow.
and other countries that had actually fled those countries because they knew of this space, which very few people know of, but they knew it to be safe. They knew it to be a space in which they could seek solace and perhaps thrive. And so it was remarkable to know that such a strong network of support exists to bring people from such far and remote places.
Right, right. I mean, these are young people who are essentially even escaping their families. Would you say that?
They're escaping their families. They're escaping their towns. They're escaping a whole system that is designed to not only vilify them but criminalize them and oftentimes kill them. So for them, it isn't a matter of when, or if rather, it's more a matter of when, and the sooner the better.
So I mean, I think that's one example that you could say that you've seen and you've learned over there in Israel of, people dealing with acceptance issues. I'm thinking about Latino families, right? And how even in our communities, in our families, we still struggle to come out, due to religious reasons, due to family value reasons, due to just misunderstanding of, the LGBTQ community, right? Coming back here to the U.S. and knowing the work that you're doing with Alma, how do you see, that connection? How do you see that intersection, and how can we move forward in our own community?
And I appreciate you bringing that up, because now that Alma is engaged, and for the viewers who may not know this, we are engaged in a program called the Family Acceptance Program, and it's a model that is pretty much evidence-based. And as we're building it, we are very cognizant of the fact that for the Latino or the Latinx LGBT youth, the connection with the family is so important that many of them, the option of simply walking away or walking out of the house and living their lives separately as LGBTQ folks is not an easy thing to do. It's not an easy decision to make. So many of them incur and suffer from depression, and many of them end up, in fact, attempting and committing suicide as a result of that. So family acceptance for the Latino or the Latinx LGBT is such an integral part of our development, of our sort of our essence, our identity, that without it, it's as if we are fractured, as if there's a fragment that it's missing, and that no other element of our LGBT life can necessarily replace it. And so I'm really excited about the prospect of what we're doing with the family acceptance model. And I'm really looking forward to using it as a way of building allies from within the family, which is so important, and using that model also to help build and enhance and improve relationships with the community. I think a community that sees families that are accepting, embracing, and supportive of their LGBTQ youth are communities that also thrive and grow and evolve. So I'm really excited about that work, and I really can't wait to see all of the results that yields for us.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So I mean, we kind of just summarizing. We talked a little bit about radical empathy and connecting that with what's going on in our country, connecting that to the election. We talked a little bit about some of the work that's being done with family acceptance, and some of the work that Alma's doing to work with the Latino, Latinx, LGBTQ community, and building family acceptance within their families. There was something that was said in the video that A Wider Bridge put together of the experience that you all encountered, which is, it said, someone mentioned, coming here is more about just learning about Israel. People coming here are learning about themselves. Would you have anything to add about that?
Well, I think that for me, it was not only a moving experience, but it was a sort of a coming to terms for me, especially as someone who's involved in activism. I needed to have that experience. And I also needed to have it in the context of what was happening in the election. And I think as a result of that, I came with a deeper appreciation of folks that really live in oppression every day and or in anticipation of really bad things happening every day, and how they cope and live and continue to support one another through that. And so I think a lot of us walked away with a sort of a more profound sense of an appreciation for the work that we're trying to do here as well.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Last thing for the video before we wrap up, it said at the very end, it said, if you don't have more questions when you leave here, then we haven't done our job. What's one question that you could say that you're walking away from this experience that you might want to explore?
I think one of them would be, how does the LGBTQ community of either Palestine or Israel survive what the political system and the political structure has built? I think that is one that I wonder about and that I'm going to be continuing to sort of ponder on.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Kenny, for talking with us and sparing us your time. You're a busy man, and we appreciate you. Kenny does amazing work for Alma, and I just want to thank him for all of the work that he does for the Latinx LGBTQ community live on air.
Thank you.
Before we wrap up, I just want to remind everybody that, once again, if you have any questions about Alma, if you have any questions about the interview that we've just conducted, the work that we do, or if you'd like to also volunteer, please make sure that you get a hold of us. You can visit our webpage at almachicago.org. And there's our contact info. Also, our email is available there for any of those questions. Another way to get involved with us is following us on Facebook, connecting with us on Facebook, and seeing what we're all about, what we're doing, what's the next event that we're organizing. Until next time, I'll see you all later. Thank you so much for tuning in. Have a good night.